Welcome, and thank you for joining me for Where Have All the Repeat Clients Gone? Long time passing. I so appreciate you taking an hour out of your day to hear what I have to say about residential cleaning, and I will try very hard to live up to your level of expectation for this hour, which is ironically the theme of my presentation today: defining and meeting levels of expectation. In the past 2 years, I have been from the East Coast, chatting with cleaners in the Happy Factory, to the West Coast, during which time I have trained more than 270 cleaners in 25 offices, from New York to Atlanta, to Texas, to California, to Canada. And if there was one common theme, one common challenge I saw in all offices, it was exactly what I started this presentation with: defining levels of expectation and then clearly making those levels of expectation clear to both your external and internal clients. If everyone understands what everybody is to expect and those expectations are delivered consistently, you will have a perfect circle of excellence that will just keep rolling and growing and rolling and growing, as anything that runs downhill like a snowball, just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what happens to your circle. As long as everyone is totally connected, everyone understands what to expect, and then you consistently deliver those expectations. My guess is, however, if I asked 100 people watching this presentation to define what they would consider a perfect cleaning, I would get as many as 20, possibly 30 different answers to that question. When I was in Houston working with an owner, his idea of a perfect cleaning was washing the windows on the inside every single time you cleaned a repeat client, even if they were weekly. This is a totally different explanation than I would give for a perfect cleaning, because I charged for windows on the inside now. I made a lot of money selling what I called ancillary services, and that was one of them. So in order to be sure that everyone is on the same level of expectations, you need to clearly define those levels of expectations. Levels of expectation change so much depending upon who's defining them. Like the dog that walked into the butcher shop. He had a bag hanging around his neck with a $20 bill and a note attached to the bag saying, "Put 2 bones and 2 steaks in the bag." Butcher saw it, read it, put the 2 bones and the 2 steaks in the bag, and the dog took the $20 bill, and the dog turned around and walked out the door. There was a man standing there watching this thinking, wow, this is really a lot. I gotta follow that dog and see what's going on. So the dog crossed the street. After looking both ways, the man did the same thing. The dog sat down at a bus stop and waited for, apparently, the bus. Man did the same thing. Bus stopped, dog got on the bus, sat down, was riding for a couple of miles, all of a sudden took his paw, pulled on the string, the bus stopped, the dog got off. Well, of course the man got off and followed him. The dog started walking down the street. He got about halfway down the block, he turned up some steps and went to the front door and used his paw to knock on the door, and nothing happened. So pretty soon the dog backed up, went back to the street, and he took a running leap at the door and hit it, fell down, still nothing happened. So now the dog went around the corner of the house, climbed up on the garbage can, and used his paw and knocked against the window. Went back down, going towards the front step, and finally the door opened and some man came out and started beating up the dog. And of course the man watching said, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing? That is the most fantastic dog I've ever seen in my life." And the owner of the dog said, "What do you mean fantastic? This is the 3rd time this week this dog has forgotten his key." Expectation levels are dependent upon the eye of the beholder. So let's talk first about the external client expectations. What should an external client expect for what they're paying? Well, in order to understand that, I think we first have to analyze what the average every other week client is paying. Across the country, the average every other week client is about 2,600 square feet. Now, of course, this changes in Hoboken that it just left, where it's more like 400 square feet, sometimes 3. Love those little houses and apartments and condos. To Atlanta, where you clean 9, 10, 15,000 square foot homes in a day. But the average is about 2,600 square feet, and the average cost, and again, New York is $48 an hour, and some cities out there are still 32. So it depends upon where you are, but the average cost does come to $160 per visit. That's an annual gross revenue for most of you, I would say 80% of $4,160. That's a 10-year gross revenue that client is giving to you of $41,600. Now, I am a farmer's daughter, so I maybe value a dollar more than most people, but to me, that's a lot of money, and I think to most people, that's a lot of money. So what should a client expect to see for $41,600? Can you see the cobwebs coming here from the duster down to the lamp? Can you see the cobwebs coming here from the wall all the way up to the ceiling? That is not a crack through that large beam. That is a cobweb. Can you see this? This looks like it's a crack in the ceiling, but actually it's cobwebs that are hanging off of the ceiling. Or how about this? That's not a paint speckled floor. That is dust that we got off of that air vent close to the floor. No, folks, these are not one-time cleanings. All of these examples are weekly or bi-weekly clients because that's all I work with. For a couple of reasons. It's difficult to teach process when it's more scrubbing than process. I really only care about the repeat clients, so that's what I want to make sure you know how to clean perfectly every time. And thirdly, I don't think the deep cleaning is a concern. You know what to clean in a deep cleaning. You would never leave a vent that dirty in a deep cleaning. But after this client's given you $2,000 to $3,000, you'll leave his vent that dirty. Kind of an oxymoron. So, repeat client expectations. Are clients fussy? Should this client cancel? Should this client cancel? Should this client complain? Should this client complain? But I'll tell you, most clients call me and say, I've got this really picky client. And I'm like, what are they picky about? If it's one of these issues, I'd say you have a practical client who wants what they're paying for. If you feel things like this are okay, if you believe after you write the level of expectation, what you're going to clean in the customer's home, and clearly define that to the client, if you do not feel that you can fulfill that level every single time you clean the home, you owe it to that client to let them know. You owe it to yourself to let them know. Because they have one level of expectation, and you are going to say, hey, we're not perfect. We're going to miss something every time we clean your home. Because perhaps we don't have a process in place. But if this is true, then you owe it to your client to say, we're going to miss one thing every time we clean your home. Or we're going to miss 2 things every time you clean your home. Again, this is a level of expectation you need to define. And if you don't think you can clean a home perfectly, according to your level of service, every single time you clean it, then you need to tell the client exactly that, or they will eventually leave because you have different levels of what expectations of what a perfect cleaning is. I also have to ask you this question. Does the home look as good in 6 months as it did after your deep clean? You sold this client, they've had a deep clean, you've said, are you happy? Hopefully you're calling them all the next day because they're a lot of work and trying to get them repeat when they're easier to do, and your cleaners love to clean them up much more. So you're calling them and saying, hey, how was the cleaning? And they're going, perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And of course it was. So you go, hey, would you like to go repeat? They say, definitely. But if you are a company that charges to have the baseboards wet wiped every time they're wet wiped, you owe it again to your client to tell them that. If you want that home to look as good in 4 months as it does today, you need to pay every now and then for wet wiping your baseboards, your door facings, your frames, the front of the kitchen cabinets, the front of the bathroom cabinets, the inside of the refrigerator, the inside of the oven, all of those things that cost more money for a deep clean. If you do not tell them this, they're going to expect you to continue to have the house looking as good as it does the day you did the deep clean. And in 4 months, they're going to go, oh, they aren't cleaning as good as they used to clean. Well, you know what? You're not. But you didn't tell your client to expect that level, did you? I believe that this is the reason why it's difficult for me to find any companies who have 754 repeat clients. The gross revenue is growing leaps and bounds because of the one-times and the move-ins and the move-outs. People don't clean their houses anymore when they're moving. They're too busy. They hire a cleaning service to do it. But folks, I am old enough to have lived through a couple of recessions during my 20 years of owning a residential cleaning service, and I made it through every recession with a stronger bottom line than I went into it with. Unlike most of my competitors. Why? Because I had a huge repeat client base. Those people are addicted to cleaning, like people are addicted to heroin. Except for this is a good addiction, right? They're not going to give up those cleanings. The wife's going to go back to work if she has to, but she's not going to clean those houses. But people who are moving, who lost their job, are going to clean their own houses. They aren't going to hire you to get it done. So you need to build that repeat client base. And it's constantly giving the service of level at a perfect level to match the level of expectations that you have told your external client they are going to receive. You know, this concept of not being able to deliver a perfect cleaning every time, I'm not sure where it started, and there's even books out now on go easy on yourself, allow yourself to not be perfect. Again, I am not sure that this is recession-proof. It works well during when things are really rolling. It's easy to get clients. It's easy to get a big base. It's easy to advertise. But when that client base shrinks, because again, whatever percentage of one-times you're cleaning will almost completely go away when you hit a recession. So if you're running 60% of your cleanings are not repeat clients, you need to take a look at that because you'll be down to about 40% when a recession hits. If you want to hold on to those clients, it's a little bit like a computer not working. We've seen computer companies come and go. Why? We've seen chip companies come and go because they can't make a good phone. They can't make a good camera. They can't make a good laptop. If every third time you bought a laptop, it didn't work, and you had to mess with it and take it back and get redos, you would probably never buy that brand of laptop again. I'm saying the same thing about your repeat client base. If every third time you have left something undone in that home, and they maybe have to call and complain because they want it done right, you're going to lose that client. And you have every single right to lose them because they just want what they paid for. Homeowners should not expect to see things like this. This is a repeat client with so much dust in the side of this telephone, you can see it. This is a lamp. If you look closely, you can see the cobwebs that are growing between the lamp shade and the base of the lamp. It looks like a cute design, almost like little crystals. Someday I might design a lamp like that, but they should not be on this particular lamp shade. Here are all the cobwebs, and here's the base of the lamp, and here's the shade on the top. Another thing that you all need to take a look at is your work orders. Your client gives the office, sometimes they call the office, sometimes they tell a previous cleaner, special directions in that home, and they expect them to be documented and followed every time. If your people can't speak English, folks, then how in the world can they follow your work order? I was actually in an office where you know how you think if somebody doesn't speak your language, talk louder English and they'll understand? Well, the pica on this work order was like 8 points high, 80 points high, because I believe this office person thought, well, same thing, if I write it really big, they'll understand it. And it was something like never touch such and such again. Believe me, it's going to get touched, possibly broken, and that would be the end of that client, and I wouldn't want to have to respond to that rating on the internet. They have to be updated each visit. We literally spent 10 minutes looking for a dog where the work order said this dog's going to try and sneak out. It's not a very friendly dog. Make sure you don't let it sneak out. It always tries to do that. We get to the door, we think we're being really safe, but we get in there, we cannot find this doggone dog. So now we have no name, we can't call it, we cannot find it. Yes, we should have called in 2 minutes instead of 10 minutes, stupid on my part. But cleaners without me probably would have spent 15 minutes looking for this dog. When we called the office, we found out that the dog died 5 years ago. Why is it still on the work order? It should include valuable information. How about the home I went into where the work order said, dust really well here? Well, to that my response has to be, in what home don't you dust really well? So people stop reading your work orders. Your cleaners do, your supervisors do, because they're boring. And it doesn't have any meat worth their reading. But this particular one, of course I read them all to see what they're like, said dust really well. We get inside the house, and thank heavens, one of the cleaners had been to this house before and said to us, don't touch the religious glass shelf over there or they'll cancel the service. Well, of course, if she weren't with us, I guarantee you I would have dusted that shelf. It's my biggest fear that I'm going to go out training in one of these homes, and when we get back to the office, the customer is going to be calling up, screaming about the quality of the cleaning. I miss nothing when I clean a home, just like I train the cleaners to do. Miss nothing. So if it needs to be missed, it needs to be on the work order, not up in somebody's head. Is it hard to get your cleaners to continue to read the work orders? Of course, especially if they have a total, like I had a team that cleaned the same 25 weekly clients for 7 years. Hard to get them to read a work order. In all honesty, I'd tell them to read it on the days they needed to be read. But you can put a message in these work orders saying, call the office and get a $5 bonus. And then you're going to sit in the office for the whole day going, do you think Cassandra's ever going to call? Heck no, she's not reading those work orders. But at least you've got them with some proof when they come in the office. I guarantee you, had they seen that, they would have called to get their $5. And since I'm on the subject of non-English speaking employees, you have to have at least one bilingual in a home if you want to build a repeat client base. For those of you who have teams out there that cannot speak a word of English, I have to tell you, you're churning your clients. They don't want to tell you they're not happy because they really love their ladies, but the inability to tell them special things is driving that client crazy. They are using you for 2 reasons. Number 1, to decrease their stress. Number 2, to live in a nice, clean home, which kind of goes back to number 1. When they can't communicate with the people cleaning their home and they're in a hurry and need to run out the door, that's why they can't do it themselves. It is very stressful and frustrating to them not to be able to communicate with at least one person on that team. Use 3-people teams and have 2 non-English speaking, and you got to have the bilingual. Now, you can get by with this, as one of my clients does, by telling your client right up front, call the office when you need something. My cleaners are busy cleaning. I don't want you calling them. I want you calling me. This has allowed this client to grow very fast in a very short period of time, but I do want you to know that he's teaching his Spanish people to speak English right now, which is exactly what you need to do. I had lots of people who couldn't speak English, but I required them to learn English words every week before they would be able to get their paycheck, which you couldn't tell them today. But they believed it back then, and they would learn those words. And after a while, it didn't have anything to do with their paycheck. They wanted to learn more. They truly did. Most of my people were bilingual within 2 years of starting working for my company. And that's what kept them with me, because I took their lives from being embarrassing situations for their children when they went to parent-teacher conferences and the child had to interpret for the teacher, to a parent being able to communicate with the teacher and ask the questions that needed to be asked, and putting the child on the level of the child. So again, you can charge $20, $25 per hour if you have non-English speaking people in homes. But if you want to make $38 per hour or more, I believe one of those 3 people, 2 people, has to speak English, or you will not retain that client at that level of pricing. Now let's talk about the third person on that circle, your internal customer or your cleaner. Does your not understanding and or meeting their level of expectation have something to do with the attrition in your company? I submit to you it does, in areas you're not even thinking about. Let's start with company t-shirts. I worked in an office where we interviewed somebody, an excellent applicant actually, and one of the things she was the most excited about was the fact that this very gracious owner gave 5 uniforms to each employee so they didn't have to worry about washing clothes during the week. Now we don't have a lot of benefits, so that's a great benefit and an inexpensive one to give, and obviously it touches the heart of the employee. So we finish interviewing her and we hire her, and that night when we're getting ready for the orientation and we're getting everything put in place like I teach everyone to do, no uniforms in her size. So there's the first level of expectation right out the window. And I had to convince the owner and the field manager that this employee had to be called and told that she would not have a uniform the next day and to wear something that she didn't mind cleaning in, because when she came to her interview, she was very nicely dressed, which is what we want them to look like when they come to an interview. Why wouldn't she come the same way the next morning, expecting to change into her uniform? So we start out right away not meeting this person's level of expectation. And what do we do when we get to the part of the orientation the next day where we talk about uniforms being mandatory and they must be worn every day? Well, that loses a little bit of its integrity when they're not important enough to have enough in stock to give to a new employee. You set the benchmark for what integrity is in your company. Please try to at least meet the level of expectation on your employee's first day. What about poor supplies? I am amazed at the supplies that I see in the field. There's not enough supplies, or they look like this. How in the world are we supposed to dust with that duster when that long duster broke like that after the first room? Or what about this towel down here? That's actually a breakage in the making. That can so easily wrap around something and break it, or get stuck, and they got to spend a whole lot of time trying to get it unstuck, which is efficiency down the tubes. And if a client sees it, it doesn't show that your company is really professional. And the green scrubbies have got to go. I had a hard time keeping them out of my cleaner's hands as well. That's why you need to be spot checking the supplies at least once a week. Have them bring in their cleaning buckets and see what's in those things. I've also seen massively scratched fixtures. Why your clients aren't calling you and saying, hey, you wrecked my fixtures is beyond me. But I've been in homes where the cleaners have probably said, we've been cleaning this house since they built it. And the fixtures are destroyed. And in the buckets, I saw the green scrubbies. Did I tell anybody? Oh yes, I told the owner and prayed that the client would never talk to the owner about it. You've got to make sure you watch, inspect what you suspect, and suspect everything is what I was told by a director at MCI once. Not a bad saying as far as checking those buckets once a week. I don't want you to micromanage, but I do want you to be aware. I train a process that requires aprons, but every single person in your company must have an apron, and you've got to have enough of them. Again, you hire a new person, you run out of aprons. Well, how can you expect them to follow your process if you have one? I'm going to say if you don't have enough aprons, you aren't following a process. And then not enough long dusters. Oh my gosh, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have run back and forth to offices to pick up a long duster because the owner assumed that the cleaners had one, but they didn't. And this is a ledge in the kitchen. This is all dust along that edge. This is a ceiling fan. I don't know if you can see the fuzziness of the dust along that. There was actually a weekly client that I cleaned in the city where we literally had to get the sheet back out and put it down on the bed because so much dust, it was that thick, and they were a weekly client. This is a window with no window treatments, and these are all cobwebs and bugs stuck in the corner of that living room, which is one of the focal points of, well, it was a family room, living room. So, is it fair for your internal client to expect to have the tools necessary to do the job they need to do so they don't have to listen to you complain about the poor job they're doing? I would say yes. This is an amazing, amazing discovery for me. Should the internal client expect to be communicated with if they cannot speak English? Yes. I hired Hispanics my 10th year in the business when Michael Dell grew and stole anybody that could walk and chew gum at the same time, which all my cleaners could, and I lost 10 of my 28 cleaners in 1 week. I turned to Hispanics. 6 months later, at 50 years old, I went down to ACC and enrolled for Spanish and took 16 credits of Spanish. It has served me well ever since. I'm about 60% bilingual, not real good, but I can understand enough to know whether or not I am being given a line or they've really bought into what I'm saying, and I can train and ask questions. I don't know that I could be doing what I'm doing right now, going into offices and literally helping owners train trainers and cleaners how to clean, if I couldn't speak their language. Because 50% of the offices that I visit, 50 to 100% of the employees speak absolutely no English at all. 50% of the teams have no one in the home that speaks or reads English, and this has to be fixed. I am fine with this as long as you have English people that are working with them, but this has to be fixed. And this is very sad. 15% of the offices, no one in the office speaks English and none of the cleaners speak Spanish, I'm sorry. No one in the office speaks Spanish and no one in the field speaks English. That can never work because at the heart and soul of keeping your external client happy and your internal client happy and you happy is a perfect circle of communications, because you have to communicate to know their level of expectations and what your level of expectation is as well. If you have this scenario, get yourself a bilingual field manager yesterday. Don't do anything else until you do. If you have a situation where at least 50% of your people aren't Hispanic, I would suggest you take a look at breaking into that market, because they are a wonderful source of employees, of cleaners. They care more than any cleaners I've ever met. They embrace learning English, they're fun to work with, and right now, folks, that's who's there to hire. That's your pool of employees. Are you consistent in your actions that your employees are seeing you take? In other words, do you have integrity? Integrity is always doing what you say you're going to do, even if it's inconvenient. For example, when that employee talks to you in a very abusive way in front of your other employees, do you fire them regardless of how badly you need a cleaner the next day? Or do you say, oh, I'll fire her when I'm staffed? If you're saying I will fire her when I'm staffed, you have lost all of your integrity. Why can't anybody in your company talk to you that way? I'm not saying this maliciously or mean, and I hope nobody loses a cleaner tomorrow. But what I tell my owners to do when they don't want to fire somebody who needs to be fired is to close their eyes and think of that person dead tomorrow. And then ask them, would you close your office? Of course not. Maybe for a couple of days to attend the funeral, but you're going to keep on cleaning. Your business is going to keep on running. You're going to feel bad. So why do you feel you can't live without that employee tomorrow? Because if you keep giving up your integrity, you're the one, or your company is the one that's going to be dead. Don't do that. Don't give that power to anybody else and make your whole staff pick up a synergy that you don't need in your office. And last, is it possible to clean a home perfect every single time? Absolutely. But you must have a proven cleaning process in place, and every single person in that entire company from the top on down must follow that system. The process must be taught to the manager. It would be great if the owner became embedded enough to understand it and what tools they need to, and training they need to support it. And every cleaner must use it consistently. Process must clean absolutely everything in a home. Cleaning is habit. And whatever that cleaner misses the first time when they're cleaning them on a repeat basis, they will miss every single time. And that's why you see ceiling fans the way they look, and air vents the way they look, and the fingerprints I saw in door facings were ridiculous. You need to follow a process, because if you don't, you're going to see things like this. See all the dust on top of that lab? It's never been cleaned. This is in like a 15,000 square foot beautiful home. Can't see how white this is, but this is a white bedroom with a white sleeper sofa in front of this huge, beautiful green plant, palm, that's almost as white as the chair. Folks, this is where they spend a lot of their time. You do have to dust plants. And if you're not going to, you need to make it very clear to every single client you talk to that you don't dust them. I think you should. I don't think when somebody's paying $42,000 every 10 years to have their home cleaned, they should have to come home someday and don their cleaning clothes and clean what you don't feel like cleaning or don't feel you know how to clean. If you don't know how to clean it, learn how to clean it. Implement this process, it will be grueling. I promised you that. Sometimes. I just did a job in New York that was phenomenal. It was so much fun, and we got so many people done that week because people embraced the system because the owner communicated that to them, which I'll talk about in a moment. There are no allowable changes to the process, so if you're going to use, for example, core training, you need to make sure you sit down and watch that videotape before you start teaching and say, I don't want this, I don't want that, I want to use this, I want to use that, and you need to make sure that every single cleaner is aware of that. However, I will say I only had one office in 25 that didn't follow it, and it has been very successful. It can take 1 to 16 weeks to do this, to roll this out, depending upon how many current cleaners you have and how much time you're willing to dedicate to the project, which is why a lot of people bring me in. And we brought up office with 31 cleaners last week, and I'm going to say she's going to be done with everybody, and they're going to all be cross-trained in 12 more days. So it depends upon, again, how much time you can give to this project. Cleaners will embrace it. Oh my gosh. They want the aprons. They do not fight them. They find them to be a very handy tool, which they are if you show them how to use it. But if you just give them an apron and don't show them how to use it, it's just one more hot thing you're making them wear. They want to be trained. I had to try and get through as many cleaners as I possibly could in Hoboken because these cleaners wanted to be trained, and it's true in almost every single office. I try and hit every single one in at least one area, train the trainer, and then they cross-train them in the other areas. But they are wanting to use the system. And do remember, it's much easier if you started with a new employee than a sovereign older employee because they haven't created habits yet. So you can create the habits for them. But if you do this right, this person was with a company in Arizona for, oh my gosh, 8 years. She thought she was the very best cleaner ever. And that smile on her face is legitimate. She was thrilled with the things I taught her that would make her required to take less steps because she's getting older. And this is a cleaner in the Happy Factory who was so thrilled with the fact that I taught her how to clean that I was way up on the hill when she realized, and she was on the bottom, had just walked down, and when she realized it was my last day, and she ran all the way back up that hill to give me a hug to tell me, thank you so much for teaching me how to clean a house. That smile is legitimate, folks. One last thing that I learned that I always thought was true in these last 2 years is you cannot find problems spot checking a home. The dust that I had flying in these homes was flying because we cleaned it. When I first walked in there, it looked like, oh, it's a pretty clean house. Then you start hitting the things that they've never hit, maybe behind doors, under, on the floor, and behind a door that's always closed. Always open. Areas that they just don't see, and you don't see either when you're spot checking. What you need to do is spot check the process. If you have a process in place, I can walk in a door and tell you in 1 minute by watching a cleaner whether or not they're following my process. Are they putting the bottle back in the loop? Are they setting it down on the table? Do they have one thing in each hand, or is one hand always free to catch whatever is falling and to help them support what they're cleaning so they can press harder? It's easy. In a minute, truly, you'll know whether or not those people are following your process. If they are, then the home is spotless. If they aren't, I guarantee you they're missing something, and good luck trying to find that something. But if they continue to miss that something, it won't be so hard for the client to find it. Because things like this cannot be caught spot checking. This is wainscoting. It's 8 feet high. Nobody could see, and this is a border around that 8 feet. This is the top of the border. I had to stand on the ladder to take a picture of this. It was very easy to find when we used a bent long duster. All of a sudden, all this stuff started flying down. Of course, I had to take a picture. But believe me, you wouldn't find that spot checking. But if this person used you on a regular basis and they moved out and you did the move out clean, I bet you don't clean for them when they get to the new house. This is an air vent in a very pricey old home, but it is the focal point of their living room. This is a very nice oriental rug. This is the dust that I got out of this air vent. I do not blame the cleaners for this because they didn't have a duster that they could get between these air vents with. This particular owner didn't believe in feather dusters or regular dusters. They do now because they didn't give them the tools to get this done. You guys worry about allergy and green friendly. Well, this is going to give this client more breathing problems than anything to do with cleaning products. Again, this was all the dust we got out of that air vent. Information is power. But it is not power if the owner is the only person who holds that information. I saw this so clearly in the offices I visited. Those offices that clearly told the cleaners I was coming there to train them, not as an auditor, I was coming there to help them to make their cleaning process easier and better, were thrilled and waiting for me to get there. They also told me that I produce core and I clean 95 houses a day when I own my company. So I went in there as a person of influence, which is what most of my videos are about. If you want people to follow what you say, then you need to be viewed as a person of influence. Those owners that didn't prepare their cleaners, I think they wanted them to be scared of me and to believe that, some of them even said, well, wait until Sharon gets here. We'll see what she says about that. Those were very difficult offices. Those cleaners did not embrace me. I was training someone in a home who had no idea I wrote core video. I think they just thought I was some business consultant who'd never cleaned a home before in my life, and now I'm telling them how to clean a home. The owner had that power. Don't hold it inside of you. Share it with others so that they can get excited with your excitement of bringing me into your office or whatever else you kick off. Let them be part of the decisions. When we decided that we were going to keep people in the same area, one duster always dusts and one person always does bathrooms or kitchens, which I could do another seminar on. I believe that is the only way to be consistent and have very little breakage and damage and to be efficient. But in the offices that decided to make that transition, if we brought the cleaners in and said, what do you like to clean? It all worked out. But if you tell somebody what they're going to clean, they will become very defensive. Cleaners actually want to know how they are doing. They want to know customer feedback. They want to know the repeat client count. When people would say, well, why are you here? Our cleaning is great. And I'd be like, your company lost 42 repeat clients in 4 months. And they were like, really? You've got to share these things with them so they know what's going on. I would like to close with the 10 recommendations that I have for y'all to build a repeat client base. One is define exactly what you do in each area and how often you do it. If you do not wet wipe baseboards for a weekly or bi-weekly client, you need to tell them that directly so that they can decide what they want to do about that issue. Adopt a cleaning process for cleaning repeat client homes and follow it consistently. You need to have a cleaning process in place that every single person uses exactly the same way so that the level of expectation of the client can consistently be met. The majority of cleaners do want to learn a process that helps them clean better and easier, so do not be afraid of this. They will embrace it and love it. 25 to 100% of the homes I trained in had something wrong in them that was worthy of cancellation. If I would have had these issues in my homes, I would have been carrying 250 clients, maybe 200 instead of 754. They have legitimate reasons for quitting. Bless the hearts of the 25 offices who have fixed this problem, because indeed they are growing massively fast. I visited one office at 460 repeat clients in, I think it was the beginning of March, and today they have almost reached 600, it's like 590. Another client I worked with had 460 clients, I believe, 225 clients when I got to them. 2.5 years later, they have 460. These clients are building their repeat client base, and instead of a 12 to 15% growth, with the repeat clients catching up to the one-time growth, they're running a 30% increase in gross revenue per year. Put in place a field manager first when you have 6 to 8 cleaners. Don't hire an administrative manager, which almost every office does. You like doing that work. You're sick of the cleaners. You've had it up to here. Hire an operations manager or a field operations manager. Somebody who's responsible for hiring those cleaners, training those cleaners, firing those cleaners, teaching them the process, keeping it in place. Somebody who's excited about these cleaners because that's their job, not somebody like you who's already profiling. What happens when you hire somebody in the office is you now have somebody in the office to chit-chat with about how horrible the cleaners are, and it gets even worse. You need to be alone in that office, and believe me, nobody will sell a client better than you, so why would you give up that job? You still need sales, but you also need the field to do it right. That is the best balance. Post your repeat client count, including adds and cancels every single day. Set a goal and tie your cleaners into that goal. If your goal is 1 a day, like the office that's gone from 460 to 600, bizarre that both of those numbers are the same, but from 460 to 600 has a goal of 1 net client per day. I thought they were crazy when they said it. They're hitting it. And believe me, their people are tied into it. His office manager gets a $500 bonus every time they make their numbers. You gotta know they're making their numbers. Is it worth $500? Yeah. Do not change teams in a weekly or bi-weekly home for any reason. I chatted with several homeowners because you gotta know when they realize I'm a coast-to-coast cleaner, they want a job. I have a hard time getting back to my job. And all of them, almost without an exception, say to me, you know, if they're not already tipping, would say, you know, I'd tip if I knew who was going to be in my home every week or every other week. You know what impact tipping will have on your attrition? Cleaners don't leave when they're making an extra $300 a month in tips. But that doesn't happen when you keep popping them from one home to another. The large majority of cleaners would rather clean repeat homes than one-times. So if you don't want attrition, then build yourself a repeat client base, and your internal clients won't go anywhere. And if you keep your internal clients with your external clients, they won't go anywhere either. Knowledge is not power unless it's shared with both your internal and external clients. Stop hiding things from both of them. Work in teams. The majority of cleaners would rather clean with someone than alone. So think of that when you build the model for your company. And cleaners want to develop relationships by cleaning with the same cleaner and cleaning the same homes. They don't want changes. And finally, become a cleaner advocate. Without cleaners, you don't have a business. One of my clients said, very rightfully so, Sharon, you're a cleaner advocate, that's what you are. You made me take more money out of my bottom line than I ever have to. We promoted a field manager, we promoted 6 people in the team, into supervisor spots of teams. He had to buy all the supplies and the aprons, spent a lot of money while I was there. Was it worth it? Every single penny of it, because it all went directly into your cleaner, the people who do what you sell for a living. Cleaners are some of the nicest people I have ever met in my life, and they certainly are the hardest working people I've ever met. 85% of them do really care about their quality, about their clients, and most importantly, you. I know you don't feel that way, but owners, they love you. They'll snitch to you about something I do wrong. Honest to God, they are so loyal to you and want only for you to do well. I don't think enough of you appreciate them enough, and I mean that. Yes, you appreciate them every now and then, you buy them pizzas, but it's every single day. Do you say, thank you for cleaning 5 houses today where nobody called up and complained? That requires a kudo. And 50% of them are absolutely happy doing nothing more than cleaning. Leave them alone. Do not try and fit a round peg in a square hole by talking a cleaner into becoming a team lead when she doesn't want to be. You'll ruin a good partner. Remember, they too have feelings, and you need to touch bases with those feelings. One of the 8 principles of being a good leader is knowing your followers. Do understand that customers love it when you train. Most of my clients say, oh, I'll have to call the customer and let them know you're going to be in the house. I don't know if they're going to like that. I think out of all 25 offices, and you got to know I've been to a ton of homes, only 2 clients were a little rude and didn't like it. But I received this note from a client myself when I got back from a trip on Monday morning. Amazing. Hello, Ms. Tinberg. My name is Tracy and Star. Have been doing an excellent job cleaning my home for quite a while. As soon as the ladies arrived today, they started telling me about the training they received this week. My question was, wow, y'all are already terrific. As they worked, though, I noticed increased efficiency and technique, which resulted in a more thorough cleaning without using more time. So, I guess I owe you a thank you, since because of you, my ladies are better than ever at what they do so well. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you have learned something here. I am Sharon Tinberg. I am owner of Success Made Easy. Well, actually, Rags to Riches. My website is Success Made Easy, spelled M-A-I-D. I have a 450-page website where you can learn a lot. I have the only training videos in the world that are in both Spanish and English, and we're done very professionally. I am coming out with a game where you will actually step into a 3D room and clean a room. That should be out in January. I come to your office for 5 to 10 days and literally roll up my shirt sleeves and teach your people how to clean a house. If you go to my website and click on cross-country training on the banner in the front, it will tell you everything that is included in there. I have Business in a Box, which you can teach yourself how to do this, very inexpensive. And I have aprons to go with the core training. If you have any questions and you'd like to speak to me personally, please give me a call at 512-964-9750. Again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for all of this time, and I certainly hope that it lived up to your level of expectation.